The Breach Protocol. The Terran spaceship Defiance hung in the void like a predator waiting to strike. Its hull was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. A strange, almost organic pattern of interlocking hexagonal plates that seemed to shimmer as the distant starlight played across its surface. The ship was smaller than most capital vessels in the Galactic Consortium's fleet, but there was something about it that made it look far more dangerous. Captain Helena Reyes stood on the observation deck, her reflection ghosting against the transparent aluminum viewport. 43 years old, with streaks of premature silver in her black hair, she had the look of someone who had seen too much combat and carried the weight of too many decisions. Her dark eyes studied her ship with a mixture of pride and apprehension. "Beautiful, isn't she?" The voice came from behind her. Dr. Ila Yamada, the ship's chief engineer and the mastermind behind its revolutionary design, moved to stand beside her. Short and wiry, with perpetually disheveled hair, Yamada looked more like an absent-minded academic than the genius who had just rewritten the rules of interstellar warfare. "She's certainly something," Reyes replied. "The question is whether she'll actually work or blow us all to atoms the moment we engage the breach drive." Yamada waved away her concern. "My calculations are solid. The quantum breach drives will work exactly as designed." "That's what worries me," Reyes said. "The consortium explicitly banned this technology for a reason." "They banned it because they're afraid of change," Yamada countered. "The Great Four have been the dominant species for 10,000 years. They'd grown comfortable with their carefully structured universe. But humanity doesn't have the luxury of comfort." Reyes couldn't argue with that. When humanity had first ventured beyond their solar system a mere 50 years ago, they had discovered a galaxy already divided into neat territories, governed by ancient species with technology centuries beyond Earth's capabilities. The consortium, made up of the Velari, the Teslux, the Morivian Collective, and the Zeltorian Empire, had reluctantly allowed humanity to join as a protectorate species, a designation that came with more restrictions than privileges. Captain to the bridge came the voice of Commander Daniels over the ship's comm system, interrupting her thoughts. "Priority message from Fleet Command." Reyes nodded to Yamada. "Showtime. Let's see if Command is finally giving us our test parameters." The Defiance's bridge was a marvel of human engineering. Unlike the sterile, minimalist command centers favored by the consortium species, it buzzed with activity. Holographic displays floated in the air, shifting and changing as officers moved through them, manipulating data with practiced gestures. The lighting was warm, amber rather than the harsh blue-white preferred by non-humans. Commander Ray Daniels, her XO, stood from the captain's chair as she entered. Tall and broad-shouldered, with skin the color of dark mahogany, Daniels was a steadying presence on the bridge. "What's the word from Command?" Reyes asked, taking her seat. "Not test parameters," Daniels said grimly. "It's a distress call. The research outpost on Proxima Beta is under attack." Reyes stiffened. "Nexus swarm." "Affirmative. 3 high ships detected entering the system 30 minutes ago. The outpost's defenses are holding for now, but they won't last long." The Nexus swarm had appeared in consortium space 6 months ago, devastating the outer colonies of 3 systems before anyone could mount an effective response. The insectoid species communicated in ways no linguist could decipher and attacked with a savagery that shocked even the warrior Zeltorians. Their ships moved in ways that defied conventional physics, somehow shifting between normal space and something else. "Closest consortium response force?" Reyes asked, though she already suspected the answer. "The Velari battle group in the Sirius sector. 14 hours at maximum FTL. Too far. The outpost would be destroyed long before help arrived." Proxima Beta housed nearly 5,000 human scientists and their families, along with a small contingent of consortium observers. It was also the site of humanity's most advanced xenobiology lab, studying the very Nexus swarm they now faced. "Looks like we're getting our test parameters after all," Reyes said, her voice tight. Battle stations. Prepare to break dock. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as the crew moved to their combat positions. Captain, Daniel said quietly, the Defiance hasn't completed its shakedown cruise. The breach drives are untested outside simulation. I'm aware, Commander. Rice touched a control on her chair, opening a ship-wide channel. All hands, this is the captain. The research outpost at Proxima Beta is under attack by Nexus swarm forces. We are the only vessel within range to respond. I won't lie to you. This ship is untested, and what we're about to attempt has never been done before. But there are 5,000 people on that outpost counting on us. On your stations, prepare for immediate deployment. She closed the channel and turned to her navigation officer. Lieutenant Chen, plot a course to Proxima Beta. Aye, Captain. Conventional FTL, or Chen hesitated. Breach protocol, Rice confirmed. We're going to see if Dr. Yamada's miracle drive actually works. Captain, Yamada interjected from his station at the engineering console. I should note that the breach drive was designed for short tactical jumps within a battle space, not for long-range travel. I'm aware of the design parameters, Doctor, Rice replied. But it's also theoretically faster than any FTL drive in the consortium. If it works as you claim, we should reach Proxima Beta in under an hour instead of the 9 it would take us at maximum conventional speed. She could see the conflict on Yamada's face. Pride in his creation warring with genuine concern. The stress on the hull could be catastrophic, yes. I've read the simulations, but I'm not willing to arrive at Proxima Beta only to find a debris field where 5,000 people used to be. Rice turned back to the navigation station. Lieutenant Chen, execute breach protocol on my mark. The Defiance disengaged from its docking clamps, thrusters pushing it away from the Terran orbital shipyard. Once at a safe distance, the conventional drives engaged, accelerating the ship toward the edge of the solar system. Breach coordinates locked in, Chen reported. Drive charging at 85%, 90%. Rice watched as the energy levels in the breach drive climbed toward critical threshold. Every simulation they had run showed the same thing. Either this would work exactly as designed, or the ship would tear itself apart as it attempted to breach the fabric of space-time in a way that violated the consortium's understanding of physics. Captain, Communications Officer Park called out, incoming transmission from the consortium embassy vessel. They're demanding we return to dock immediately. Of course they were. The consortium observers had been suspicious of the Defiance project from the beginning, though humanity had been careful to keep the true nature of the breach drive classified. Acknowledge receipt of message, Rice replied. Inform them we're responding to a priority distress call. Breach drive status. Drive at 100% capacity, Captain, Yamada reported. Ready on your command. Rice took a deep breath. This was the moment that would either validate humanity's approach to space travel or prove that the consortium's caution had been justified all along. Execute breach protocol. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a deep vibration began to build throughout the ship, not from the engines as one might expect, but seemingly from the structure itself. On the main view screen, space in front of the Defiance began to distort, as if viewed through rippling water. Breach field forming, Yamada announced, his voice tight with concentration as his hands flew over his console. Phase transition in 3, 2, 1. The stars stretched, then vanished, replaced by a churning maelstrom of colors that had no names in any human language. The ship shuddered, and warning indicators flashed across multiple stations. Hull integrity at 92% and holding, reported Chief Takanashi from the engineering station. Structural stress within acceptable parameters. Breach drive temperature climbing, Yamada warned. 107% of projected values. Can we maintain? Rice asked. Yamada hesitated. Yes, but I wouldn't recommend staying in breach space for the full hour. The theoretical models may have been optimistic. Translation. They were in uncharted territory. and the ship might not hold together as long as they had hoped. Rise nodded grimly. How close can we get to Proxima Beta before we need to drop back to normal space? Yamada consulted his instruments. At current degradation rates, maybe 70% of the way there. We'd still need to cover the last leg with conventional FTL. Better than nothing, Rise replied. Maintain breach protocol until the system tells you we can't anymore. The journey through breach space was unlike anything described in consortium texts on FTL travel. The view screen showed only swirling chaos, punctuated by occasional flashes of structure that looked almost like glimpses of other realities. The hull creaked and groaned like a sailing ship in heavy seas, and twice they had to route emergency power to shore up failing structural integrity fields. 43 minutes into their transit, the alarms began in earnest. Breach drive reaching critical temperature, Yamada shouted over the blaring alerts. We need to drop back to normal space now. Execute emergency protocol, Rise ordered. All hands, brace for transition. The ship shuddered violently as the breach drive powered down. The swirling chaos outside gave way to normal space with a lurch that threw several crew members from their stations. Emergency lighting flashed, and the distinctive acrid smell of overheated circuitry filled the bridge. Damage report, Rise demanded, steadying herself against her chair. Breach drive offline, Yamada reported. Cooling systems damaged but functioning. Conventional FTL operational. Hull integrity at 78%, Takanashi added. We've got micro-breaches on decks 4 through 7, emergency force fields holding. Where are we? Rise asked, turning to navigation. Chen checked his instruments. Approximately 2.3 light-years from Proxima Beta, Captain. The breach drive got us nearly 80% of the way there. Better than expected. Time to destination at maximum conventional FTL. Just under 2 hours, Captain. Not ideal, but far better than the 9 hours it would have taken them without the breach drive. Set course for Proxima Beta, maximum speed. And someone get me an update on the situation at the outpost. As the Defiance accelerated toward their destination, Communications Officer Park finally managed to establish contact with the research station. Captain, I have Dr. Eliza Kendrick, Station Director, on secure channel. The main view screen shifted to show a woman in her 60s, her lab coat smudged with what looked like soot, a cut on her forehead hastily bandaged. This is Captain Rise of the TSS Defiance. We're responding to your distress call. What's your situation, Doctor? Kendrick looked stunned. Defiance. How are you here already? The Fleet Command acknowledgements said the closest ship was 14 hours out. We have a new drive system, Rise replied, not elaborating. Your situation. Kendrick shook her head, focusing. 3 Nexus High ships entered the system 3 hours ago. They've been systematically taking out our orbital defenses. Ground shields are holding for now, but power reserves are down to 40%. We've got nearly 5,000 people here, Captain, including 400 children. What about the consortium observers? A flash of something, disgust, perhaps, crossed Kendrick's face. The Valari diplomatic shuttle departed as soon as the Nexus ships were detected. The Morivian delegate remains with us, but their powers of observation won't do much against Nexus ground troops. Typical. The consortium races were quick to claim authority over humanity, but equally quick to abandon them when danger appeared. We'll be there in under 2 hours, Doctor. Hold position and conserve your shield power. Defiance out. As the communication ended, Rice turned to her tactical officer, Lieutenant Santos. What weapons do we have that can engage 3 high ships? Santos, a compact woman with a perpetual frown of concentration, consulted her station. Conventional armaments are insufficient, Captain. Our disruptor cannons might damage 1, but not 3 simultaneously. And non-conventional options. Santos hesitated. The breach missiles are loaded, but they've never been tested outside simulation. The breach missiles were the offensive application of the same technology that powered the ship's drive. Theoretical weapons that would create microseconds of breach space inside enemy vessels with catastrophic results. Like the drive itself, they violated a dozen consortium weapons treaties. "Well," Rice said grimly, "looks like today is a day for field testing. Prepare breach missiles for deployment once we reach the Proxima system. And someone wake up Dr. Yamada. I need that breach drive operational again before we engage the enemy." As her crew moved to execute her orders, Reyes stared at the starfield on the main view screen. The Defiance was about to face its first real combat test against an enemy that had so far defeated everything the consortium had thrown at it. They were using untested technology that violated the fundamental rules of the galactic community humanity had joined. But that was precisely the point. Humanity had quickly discovered upon joining the galactic stage that playing by the established rules would forever keep them subordinate to species that had millennia of head start. If they were going to survive, let alone thrive, they needed to find their own path forward. The Defiance wasn't just a ship, it was humanity's declaration that they would not be bound by limitations imposed by others. Whether that declaration would lead to triumph or disaster remained to be seen. As the ship hurtled toward a confrontation that would determine the fate of thousands, one thing was certain. After today, the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. Against all logic, the Proxima Beta system appeared on the view screen, a distant yellow star surrounded by its family of planets. The fourth planet, where the research outpost was located, glowed a pale blue against the blackness of space, and in orbit around it, the unmistakable silhouettes of 3 Nexus high ships, their organic-looking hulls bristling with weapon emplacements. "Drop to sublight," Captain Reyes ordered. "Tactical analysis." The Defiance decelerated smoothly, its conventional drives functioning perfectly despite the strain the breach drive had put on the ship's systems. Lieutenant Santos' fingers danced over her console as she assessed the tactical situation. 3 Nexus high ships, as reported. They've destroyed 7 of the 8 orbital defense platforms. The last one is barely operational. Ground shields at the outpost are down to 27% power and failing. "Life signs on the outpost?" Rides asked. "Strong readings. All 5,000 colonists appear to be alive, concentrated in the central habitation dome." Reyes nodded. "Not too late then. What about the Nexus ships? Have they detected us?" "Negative, Captain," Santos replied. "We're still at extreme range, and our hull composition seems to be absorbing their standard scanning frequencies. Another innovation that would make the consortium uncomfortable. The Defiance's hull wasn't just armor. It was a complex matrix of metamaterials designed to bend certain energy frequencies around the ship, rendering it nearly invisible to standard detection systems. "Dr. Yamada, status of the breach drive." Reyes turned to the engineer, who looked haggard after hours of emergency repairs. "Barely functional," he admitted. "I can give you maybe one short tactical jump, but anything more will burn out the entire system." "One jump might be enough," Reyes mused. "Santos, what if we performed a breach jump directly behind the lead high ship and deployed breach missiles before they could react?" The tactical officer considered. "Theoretically effective, but the other 2 ships would still have time to target us. Our conventional shields wouldn't hold against that kind of firepower for long." "What about using the jump to get between the high ships and the planet?" Commander Daniels suggested. "Force them to adjust their firing solutions to avoid hitting the colony." Reyes shook her head. "Too risky. If even one shot from the Nexus ships penetrates the station's failing shields, we'll lose hundreds of people." She studied the tactical display, looking for an advantage. "What if we don't try to engage all 3 at once?" "Captain," Santos looked up. "The Nexus swarm operates with a hive mentality, right? What happens if you cut off the head?" Understanding dawned in Santos's eyes. "The lead ship, it's acting as the coordinator. If we take it out, the other 2 might become disorganized, at least temporarily." Reyes finished. "Long enough for us to evacuate the outpost or get reinforcements here." It was a gamble, but they were out of better options. All hands, battle stations. Prepare for combat maneuvers. Dr. Yamada, I need that breach drive ready for a single precision jump. Captain. Communications Officer Park interrupted. We're being hailed by the Moravian delegate on the outpost. Reyes frowned. The Moravians were the most scientifically advanced of the consortium races, and generally the most sympathetic to humanity. On screen. The view screen shifted to show a tall, willowy figure with iridescent skin that seemed to shift between green and blue. The Moravian's large, multifaceted eyes gleamed with an intelligence that always made Reyes slightly uncomfortable. Captain Reyes, the Moravian said, its voice melodious even through the translator. I am Delegate Varel. I must insist that you withdraw from this system immediately. Reyes blinked in surprise. Delegate, there are 5,000 people on that outpost about to be slaughtered by the Nexus swarm. We're their only chance of survival. The consortium relief fleet will arrive in 12 hours, Varel replied. They are properly equipped to handle this situation. In 12 hours, there won't be anyone left to save, Reyes argued. And I suspect you know that, Delegate. The Moravian's skin shifted to a deeper blue, a sign of emotional distress in their species. Captain, I have been monitoring your vessel since it arrived in the system. The TSS Defiance is utilizing technologies explicitly forbidden by the Treaty of Rigel. Your breach drive violates 17 separate provisions, so the Moravians have been spying on the Defiance project. Reyes wasn't particularly surprised. With all due respect, Delegate, we don't have time for a legal debate. There are lives at stake. There are always lives at stake, Captain. That does not justify abandoning the fundamental rules that make interspecies cooperation possible. The Moravian leaned closer to the camera. The Nexus swarm is a terrible threat, yes, but what humanity is developing may be far worse in the long term. Worse than extinction. Reyes countered. Perhaps. Varel's multifaceted eyes seemed to look through her. Did your scientists ever ask why the consortium banned breach technology? Did they question why, in 10,000 years of space travel, none of the elder races pursued this avenue of research? Before Reyes could answer, alarms blared across the bridge. We've been detected, Santos called out. 2 Nexus ships are breaking orbit and moving to intercept. Reyes turned back to the view screen. I'm sorry, Delegate, but we have people to save. We can discuss treaties after everyone's safe. She cut the transmission before Varel could respond. Time to intercept. 12 minutes at their current velocity, Santos reported. Dr. Yamada, is the breach drive ready? The engineer nodded, though sweat beaded on his forehead. Yes, but I must emphasize that we get one jump. Maybe 2 minutes of operation before the entire system fries itself. Understood. Reyes turned to navigation. Lieutenant Chen, plot a breach jump that will place us directly behind the lead high ship, the one still in orbit above the outpost. Breach coordinates plotted, Captain. Weapons status. Breach missiles armed and ready, Santos confirmed. Targeting solution locked for the moment we complete the jump. Reyes took a deep breath. All hands, secure for breach maneuver. Execute jump on my mark. 3, 2, 1. Mark. The now familiar vibration built throughout the ship as the breach drive engaged. The view screen showed the fabric of space rippling, then tearing open as the Defiance punched through into breach space. This time the transition lasted only seconds before they emerged. Directly behind the massive Nexus high ship hovering above Proxima Beta. Fire breach missiles. Reyes ordered the instant they reappeared. 4 missiles streaked from the Defiance toward the unsuspecting high ship. They struck in perfect synchronization, their specialized warheads activating simultaneously. For a heartbeat, nothing seemed to happen. Then patches of the Nexus vessel simply ceased to exist as microscopic pockets of breach space momentarily formed inside its hull, taking sections of the ship with them when they collapsed. The effect was catastrophic. The high ship didn't explode so much as it disintegrated, chunks of its hull spinning off in all directions as internal systems failed catastrophically. "Direct hit," Santos exclaimed. "Target vessel critically damaged. Breach drive status," Rise asked. Yamada's face was grim as he checked his readings. "Complete burnout, Captain. The containment fields are failing. We need to jettison the breach core before it destabilizes." Rise had expected this. The breach drive was a prototype, never meant to endure the stress they'd put it through. "Initiate emergency ejection sequence. Commander Daniels, get us clear using conventional drives." As the Defiance moved away from the crippled Nexus ship, the bottom section of its hull opened, releasing a glowing cylindrical object that pulsed with unstable energy. The breach core tumbled away from the ship, detonating moments later in a silent flash that briefly lit up the entire system like a miniature sun. "Core successfully jettisoned," Yamada reported, slumping slightly in relief. "Conventional systems undamaged. The other Nexus ships have altered course," Santos called out. "They're returning to the outpost at maximum speed." So much for the hive mind theory. The remaining Nexus ships hadn't been disoriented by the destruction of their leader. If anything, they seemed more determined than ever. "Time to intercept." 7 minutes, Captain. And without the breach drive. Santos didn't need to finish. The Defiance was now effectively a conventional warship, facing two enemies that outgunned it significantly. "Open a channel to the outpost," Rise ordered. "Tell Dr. Kendrick to prepare for immediate evacuation. We'll hold off the Nexus ships while they load everyone they can onto transport vessels." As Park relayed the evacuation order, Commander Daniels moved to stand beside Rice's chair. "Captain, even at maximum capacity, the outpost's transports can only handle about 2,000 people. That leaves 3,000 still in danger." "I'm aware, Commander." Rice's voice was tight. "But 2,000 is better than none. And maybe we can buy enough time for the rest." The bridge fell silent as the reality of their situation sank in. They had destroyed one Nexus ship, a remarkable achievement in itself, but at the cost of their primary advantage. Now they faced a desperate holding action that they were unlikely to survive. "Captain," Park called out, "incoming transmission from the Moravian delegate." "Not now," Rice snapped. "Captain, he says it's about the breach technology. Something we need to know." Rice hesitated, then nodded. "Put him through." Delegate Varel appeared on screen again, but this time the Moravian was in a different location. What looked like a laboratory deep within the outpost. "Captain Rice, I observe your attack on the Nexus vessel. Impressive, if ultimately futile." "We're a little busy at the moment, Delegate. What do you want?" "To offer you information that may save the people on this outpost." The Moravian moved aside, revealing a workstation covered in complex holographic displays. "What I am about to tell you violates several consortium secrecy protocols, but I find I cannot stand by while thousands die for the sake of rules." That got Reyes's attention. The Moravians were known for their absolute dedication to consortium law. "I'm listening." "The breach technology your Dr. Yamada developed was not banned arbitrarily. The consortium discovered this approach thousands of years ago, during our early expansion." Varel manipulated the holographic display, bringing up a diagram that looked disturbingly similar to the Defiance's breach drive. "We abandoned it not because it doesn't work, clearly it does, but because of what it attracts." "Attracts?" Rice felt a chill run down her spine. "The Nexus swarm is not, as you believe, a random aggressive species. They are guardians, or perhaps antibodies would be a better translation. They respond to breaches in the fabric of reality." The implications hit Rice like a physical blow. "You're saying we called them here? That the breach drive acts as a beacon?" "Yes." The Moravian's skin had shifted to a deep purple, a color Rice had never seen in their species before. "The swarm exists in a space adjacent to our reality. When they sense a breach, they come to repair it by eliminating whatever caused it." "Why didn't you warn us?" Daniels demanded, stepping forward. We did, Commander. The Treaty of Rigel explicitly forbids this technology. We simply did not explain why, as the consortium long ago decided that such knowledge was too dangerous to share widely. Varel's eyes gleamed. Perhaps that was a mistake. Reyes struggled to process this revelation. If the Moravian was right, then humanity's breakthrough technology was actually drawing the Nexus swarm to human settlements. The attack on Proxima Beta wasn't random. It was targeted because of the Defiance's test runs in nearby space. How do we stop them? She asked finally. That I do not know, Varel admitted. In ancient times, the consortium simply abandoned breach technology, and eventually, the swarm retreated. But that took decades. We don't have decades, Reyes said grimly. Those ships will reach the outpost in less than 5 minutes. The Moravian hesitated, then continued. There is a theory. It was never tested. The breach creates a disturbance that attracts them. A controlled collapse, a sealing of the breach, might be interpreted as the threat being neutralized. Our breach core is gone, Yamada interjected. We ejected it. But the breach missiles, Reyes realized. We still have those. Yes, Varel confirmed. If you could create a breach and then immediately collapse it in a controlled manner, it might signal to the swarm that their work is done. It was a desperate theory, based on untested assumptions about an enemy they barely understood, but they were out of alternatives. Dr. Yamada, Reyes turned to her engineer. Can you modify our remaining breach missiles to create a self-collapsing field? Yamada looked thoughtful. Possibly. The containment algorithms would need to be reversed. He began typing rapidly on his console. Yes, I think so. But we'd need to detonate them at a precisely calculated distance from the Nexus ships. Too close, and the effect might still damage them, triggering more aggression. Too far, and they might not register the collapse at all. How long to make the modifications? 10 minutes, minimum. The Nexus ships will reach weapons range in 4 minutes, Santos warned. Reyes made her decision. Commander Daniels, take the con. Move to intercept the Nexus vessels and buy Dr. Yamada the time he needs. Use whatever conventional weapons we have to slow them down, but keep your distance. Lieutenant Santos, calculate the optimal detonation point for the modified breach missiles. As her officers moved to execute her orders, Reyes turned back to the view screen where Delegate Varel was watching. Delegate, I suggest you move to one of the evacuation transports immediately. The Moravian's skin shifted through several colors before settling on a calm blue. I will remain at the outpost, Captain. My presence here may prove useful yet. Reyes nodded, respecting the delegate's courage. Thank you for the information. Do not thank me yet, Captain Reyes. Varel's multifaceted eyes reflected the emergency lights of the laboratory. If your attempt fails, the consortium will want someone to blame for the loss of Proxima Beta. I suspect humanity's breach technology will be the obvious scapegoat. Political consequences were the least of Reyes's concerns at the moment, but she understood the warning. Success here wouldn't just save lives. It might determine humanity's standing in the galactic community for generations to come. The Defiance surged forward on conventional thrusters, placing itself between the approaching Nexus ships and the vulnerable outpost. The evacuation transports were already launching, small dots of light rising from the planet's surface. 2,000 people might escape if the Defiance could hold back the enemy long enough. Nexus ships entering weapons range in 30 seconds, Santos reported. Fire disruptor cannons, wide dispersal pattern, Daniels ordered. Let's give them something to think about. The Defiance's conventional weapons opened fire, sending pulses of energy toward the approaching high ships. The shots dissipated harmlessly against the Nexus vessel's shields, but they had the desired effect, drawing the enemy's attention away from the escaping transports. Enemy vessels returning fire, Santos warned. The first shots from the Nexus ships hit like sledgehammers. The Defiance rocked violently as its shields struggled to absorb the impact. Shields at 72% and dropping. Chief Takanashi reported from engineering. We can't take sustained fire like this for long. Evasive pattern Delta, Daniels ordered. Keep moving. Don't give them a stationary target. The Defiance danced through space, its conventional drives pushing to their limits as Lieutenant Chen executed the complex maneuvers. The ship managed to avoid the worst of the Nexus weapons fire, but each hit that connected weakened their shields further. Dr. Yamada, Reyes called out, status on the missile modifications. Almost there, he replied, not looking up from his work. The algorithms are rewriting now. Need another 3 minutes. Shields at 54%, Takaneshi warned. Hull breaches on decks 2 and 6. Status of the evacuation? Reyes asked. Park checked her console. First wave of transports clearing the atmosphere now. Second wave loading. They'll need another 7 minutes to get everyone they can aboard. 7 minutes they might not have. But Reyes wouldn't abandon the people on that outpost. Not while the Defiance could still fight. Divert auxiliary power to shields, she ordered, and continue evasive maneuvers. The ship shuddered again as another hit connected. A console exploded in sparks, and emergency lighting activated on half the bridge. Shields at 38%, Takaneshi report.